Many times in school we heard about Vikings. However, almost everything teachers and books taught was not even true. Today, I want to tell the truthful story about Vikings, which will help to remember all relevant facts and their original story as well. The term Viking refers to the Scandinavian seafarers from Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, whose raids and subsequent settlements had a significant impact on European culture. Their influence was even felt in Mediterranean regions from approximately 790 to 1100 AD. It's important to note that not all Vikings were Scandinavians, and not all Scandinavians were Vikings. The term Viking was used exclusively for those who ventured out to sea with the purpose of acquiring wealth by raiding other lands. This word was mainly used by English writers, not widely by other cultures. Most Scandinavians were not Vikings, and those who traded with other countries were known as Norsemen, Normans, or other terms reflecting their origins. From 793 AD, for the next 300 years, Vikings raided coastal and inland areas of Europe and engaged in trade, which extended to the Byzantine Empire in the east. They even served as elite Varangian guards under the Byzantine emperor. Their influence on the cultures they interacted with was significant, particularly in Scotland, Britain, France, and Ireland. Vikings founded Dublin, colonized Normandy, land of the Norse, in France, created the Danelaw in Britain, and settled in many places in Scotland. Their settlements in Iceland and Greenland spread Scandinavian culture further across the North Atlantic, providing a strategic position for further exploration and colonization. Vikings were the first Europeans to visit North America and establish settlements. The site of L'Anse aux Meadows in Newfoundland has been confirmed as an early Viking settlement, although there is still debate about other locations, from Maine to Rhode Island and even farther south, as potential evidence of early Viking presence in North America. Although Vikings are often depicted in popular culture as horned helmeted warriors, this is inaccurate. Horned helmets would have been impractical in battle and likely used only for ceremonial purposes. Moreover, while Vikings were indeed great warriors, and their name today is almost synonymous with war, slaughter, and destruction, an association reinforced by modern media, Scandinavian culture was highly developed, and Viking raids were just one aspect of their civilization. Culture and lifestyle Viking society was divided into three classes: Jarls, aristocracy; Carls, commoners; and thralls, slaves. Social advancement was possible for Carls, but not for thralls. Slavery was widespread across Scandinavia and is considered one of the main motivations behind Viking raids on other lands. Women in Viking society had more rights and freedoms than in many other cultures. They could inherit property, decide where to live if unmarried, represent themselves in legal matters, and own businesses, such as breweries, taverns, shops, and farms. Women were also revered as seers of the gods, whether as goddesses of Freya or Odin. Men were not religious leaders in Viking culture. Women interpreted messages from the gods for the people. Marriage was arranged within the clan, and neither the man nor the woman could choose their partner. Women's clothing and jewelry were similar to men's in their social class, and neither gender wore earrings, which were seen as a sign of lower status. Women were responsible for raising children and managing the household, though both men and women participated in cooking for the family. Most Scandinavians were farmers, but there were also blacksmiths, weapon makers, brewers, traders, weavers, luthiers, makers of string instruments, drum makers, poets, musicians, craftsmen, carpenters, jewelers, and many others. Amber trade, a fossilized pine resin, was a significant source of income for them. Scandinavians enjoyed leisure just as much as other cultures. They engaged in sports, played board games, and held festivals. Sports included light combat, wrestling, mountain climbing, swimming, spear throwing, hunting, mounted combat, the details of which remain unclear, and a field game called knatteleikur, which resembled hockey. Their board games included dice games, strategic games similar to chess, and actual chess. Despite the common image of Vikings as dirty and savage people, they were quite sophisticated, paying great attention to hygiene and appearance. When trade with the East was established, Viking jarls often wore silk and fine jewelry. They braided their hair, kept themselves well-groomed, and wore elaborate cloaks and finely crafted jewelry such as necklaces, bracelets, and armbands. Hygiene was not only a sign of wealth and status, but also had religious significance. Vikings were careful to keep their nails short, as they believed in Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods and the end of the world. According to their beliefs, at this moment, the ship Naglfar would appear, sailing on waves caused by the great serpent Jörmungandr. Naglfar was built from the nails of the dead, so those who died with untrimmed nails contributed material for the construction of the ship, thus hastening the inevitable end. Thakarfari, Scandinavian mythology. The end of the world was considered inevitable, but it could still be fought against. The Scandinavian gods gave people the breath of life, and each person had to prove they were worthy of this gift. The Scandinavian gods arrived in the region with Germanic migrations around the beginning of the Bronze Age, around 2300 to 1200 BC. These were powerful gods who knew their time was limited and lived to make the most of it, inspiring their followers to do the same. The main sources of knowledge about Scandinavian religion are the Poetic Edda, which conveys oral traditions from the 9th and 10th centuries AD, and the Prose Edda, around 1220 AD, a collection of sagas based on older stories. In Scandinavian mythology, before the world existed, there was only ice and a giant named Ymir who survived by the milk of the great cow Audhumla. As she licked the ice to satisfy her hunger, she freed the god Buri, who became the father of a son named Bor. Bor married Bestla, daughter of the ice giant Bolthorn, and they gave birth to the gods Odin, Vili, and Ve. These gods united, killed Ymir, and made the world from his body. The first humans, Ask and Embla, were brought to life by Odin, who breathed life into them, while other gods endowed them with reason and emotions. The world created by the gods was imagined as a great tree known as Yggdrasil, which encompassed 9 levels of existence. The most well-known were Midgard, the world of mortals; Asgard, home of the gods; Alfheim, home of the elves; and Niflheim, a realm beneath Midgard where those who died dishonorably went. Heroic women, especially those who died in childbirth, went to Frigg's Hall in Asgard, where they spent eternity in the company of Odin's wife. Men who died heroically in battle went to Odin's Hall, Valhalla. The entire universe was structured according to the principles of order set by Odin and other gods after their victory over the ice giants. The ice giants lived in their own world, Jotunheim, but constantly threatened both Asgard and Midgard. One day, in the future, the great day of destruction, Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, would arrive and chaos would be unleashed. When Ragnarok comes, the wolf skull will swallow the sun, and his brother Hati will consume the moon, plunging the world into darkness. At the same time, the great wolf Fenrir will race through all the levels of Yggdrasil, bringing destruction. The god Heimdall will blow his giant horn, calling the gods to battle, and Odin will summon all the heroes from Valhalla to join him in defending the cosmos. The gods will fight valiantly, but ultimately, they will fall in battle, and the entire universe will be consumed by fire and drown in the primordial waters. Though this is the end of the world, it is not the end of all life. After the current world is destroyed, a new one will emerge from the waters, and the cycle will begin anew. Scandinavian gods were revered through the deeds and feats of the people who believed in them. Before Christianity arrived, there was no evidence of a religious hierarchy in Scandinavia. Women considered chosen by the gods were called Völvas. They could hear divine words and convey them to other mortals. Although there were temples dedicated to the gods, most worship took place in natural sites associated with a specific deity. Stories about the gods, the creation of the world, and Ragnarok were passed orally and were only written down centuries later by the Icelandic historian and poet Snorri Sturluson.